This week, the big stunt and the strategy behind Absa's big brand overhaul. We'll take a look at a new campaign honouring Madiba and his iconic haircut as South Africans celebrate his centenary in 2018. And our ad of the week pays homage to tennis ace Serena Williams' epic comeback at this year's Wimbledon. It must be the most talked about brand refresh of the year. The big banking group Absa taking to the skies, literally, with Africa's first drone show, all to celebrate its fresh new visual identity and also a pledge to become a forward-facing African bank for the digital age. Coinciding with the overhaul is a new brand ad and coining of the term Africanicity. Well, David Wingfield looks after marketing at Absa. He's the one in the red jacket. And the other is David Blythe, the other David from the strategy agency Yellowwood. Gentlemen, to both of you, a very warm welcome. You guys haven't formed a band, have you? And that's a really 80s joke.
We did have one, yes.
long time ago. David Wingfield, to you first of all, this has finally happened. I mean, there's been a fair degree of confusion over the past couple of years about the Absa and Barclays identity.
You know, in 2005, when Barclays bought the first piece of Absa, really running through culmination August 2013 of Barclays Africa Group being formed as the listed entity on the stock exchange, where Absa was the trading entity in South Africa, and then the Barclays markets outside of South Africa on the rest of the continent. And actually we were on a journey to become Barclays. Absa was going to change to Barclays, and then come 2016 March, our parent announced, Barclays PLC, that they were going to sell down their share of the business on the continent. And from that point, we've gone the other way.
I guess that's when the hard work starts. So, yeah. David Blythe, how do you start strategically a big brand refresh like this? Where's the starting point?
I think you've got to start with perceptions, what people currently perceive about the brand. And obviously we did a lot of research and an extensive amount across the continent, Jeremy. So over 130,000 external data points, 4,500 key interviews with some face-to-face, lots of workshops with both clients and colleagues across the continent, engaging with them, trying to understand what it is that would represent success for them and what do they desire out of a bank. And that process was iterative, so we did it once across all countries and then looped back again once we'd gathered a lot of information and had something to share with people. And it was through that process that it became very, very clear the language that people were feeding back to us was very much one of please give us fundamental change here. Don't make this incremental. We want to be bold.
Part of the refresh was leaked before the actual launch. Was that useful, or did that rain on your parade?
To be honest, we were surprised we got that far. One of the important things we took a decision to do was to make sure that we share our new brand and our journey with every one of our colleagues. As of last week, we'd been through 40,000 of the 42,000 in a 3-hour workshop, which we started 6 weeks before brand launch. We talked to them about where we'd come from, how we got here, our new strategy, and we showed them the brand. It was a massive act of trust, and amazingly, not one of our people leaked it. It actually leaked by CIPC, which was quite ironic.
Any PR is good PR.
And it was a few days before, so it didn't really rain on our parade at all.
David Wingfield, have you been surprised that some of the reviews, particularly about the logo itself, have been less than positive? Some people are saying that there's nothing African about it at all. Other people have said it looks like a stop sign. I mean, how do you respond to criticism like that?
I think it's one of those things, Jeremy, that I don't think anybody's done a logo refresh in the age of social media that I can remember that ever got anything overwhelmingly positive. I think it happens when you change something, you get a response. I think what is important about, people talk about the story of where our logo comes from. The fact of the matter is, circle, why did we change to a circle? Well, frankly, it's an infinite number of points gathered around something. It's very African, it's about networks, it's about a sense of community, a sense of togetherness, uppercase to lowercase. The previous shapes were quite hard and austere and So we've gone to something a whole lot more friendlier. You make them lowercase. People stop asking you, what does it stand for? So there's a lot of that stuff. And interestingly enough, my best comment has always been, my toddler could have done it. Well, I mean, the reality is, if a toddler can now draw our logo in a digital age where the drive is towards infinite simplicity, then I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, I fear that toddlers are now going to start branding agencies. David Blythe, this is, one of the insights is Absa has a deep knowledge of African markets and global scalability. But don't all banks strive for that these days? I mean, is that really a key strategic differentiator?
It is if you get it right here. I mean, I think if you are able to show up in the most relevant way possible and actually demonstrate through action a real connection with people and their desire and their ambitions on the ground, I think then you can be distinctive. I think there are a lot of words out there. There are a lot of people saying that they do. I think the important part of this strategy that we wanted to get right internally is for Absa to be a doing brand.
Talking about lots of words, Africanicity. Explain that to me.
So Africanacity.
Have I pronounced it correctly?
Africanacity.
Africanacity.
Yeah. So the idea, and it's a word that came from FCB in response to a brief, and the brief was, can we find the most simple way for people to connect with the strategy? Because there's lots of things we wanted to achieve, many words, many things we wanted people to say back to us in a couple of years' time. But we wanted it to reflect the people, not to be about the bank. So how do we find a way that, how do we find a single word that represents what people's ambitions are? And the ingenuity, the audacity, the positivity, the desire for people on this continent to succeed and to be better than they are today is captured, we think, in that word.
David Wigfield, there was an American agency involved in this, am I correct?
Originally, Jeremy, we used Ogilvy Red, their brand consultancy, again, not the ad agency part of Ogilvy, from New York. And right up front in this process, we brought them on board because we felt we needed to do a very in-depth brand valuation. Obviously, there are lots of methodologies in the market, brand finance, for example, using public information, value brands, but we wanted a much more in-depth benchmark to be set. So we quite liked their methodology, so we used them in 2016 for that. So we understand by market, by business unit, exactly what it is that Absa was worth, what Barclays worth, some of our insurance businesses are worth. So that for us was a benchmark from which we went and did all of our
The reason why I asked
work.
the question is you're positioning yourself as an African bank of Africa, yet you use an agency from New York.
Yeah, I think up front we used somebody with a methodology that we couldn't necessarily find here.
Does the methodology not exist here?
No, well, and understand they worked with Ogilvy here.
Yep.
But the methodology, and then from there, when it came down to, okay, let's do the strategy work, the design work, the marketing and advertising work, we obviously have, and even the media work, we've got, I mean, we have Yellowwood, we brought on board, we have Grid, FCB, and then Cara. So all South African businesses.
I want to talk a little bit about measurability, David Blythe. Ultimately, what do you try to achieve out of this? Can you actually measure quantifiably a change of a brand refresh?
Well, I think our ultimate measure would be if we get customer advocacy right and the response after people's interaction with people in the bank from a service perspective. If we can get that right and we can change, I guess, things like NPS measures or things like what people feel about the experience that they've had at Absa, that would be winning.
So what type of experience would you chase against this brand refresh? What does that mean?
Where people actually get things done. Where if I go into a branch, for example, or if I call somebody at the bank, or if I interact with it through any channel, that actually somebody tries to go the extra mile and get something done for me as an individual, as a customer.
David Wingfield, tell me about the drones. How do drones fit into all of this?
With all of these things, we were thinking quite long and hard about what do you do to relaunch a brand, firstly. And like most companies, you see yourselves in a digital future.
Yeah.
And also a future that is potentially a little bit more environmentally friendly. You kind of go, what do you do? And we found this idea of the Intel Drone Light Show. So we rang them up and brought them down here and flew a pattern using drones, because for us it was about an African first. It had never been done before. we do quite a lot of work with drones anyway in agriculture, part of our business and other things. So it was just for us, it needed to be big and impressive. So that's why we brought them down here.
David Wingfield, David Blythe, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
It's your turn now. You let us know what you think of Absa's brand new look and the brand ad, and you can find all of those details on the Mags on Media Facebook page. Next, a campaign honouring Madiba's iconic hairstyle, and later, an ad celebrating Serena Williams' return to the grass court.